Welcome to Unscripted with Marilyn Morales. Today is January 1st, 2023. So, a happy new year to everyone who is watching us. Today, I am joined by Daniela Roman, CFO of the Co-Author Network, and one of my best friends. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Marilyn. And Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year to you and your family, Marilyn. I'm so excited to be here and honored that you asked me to co-host today. And like Marilyn said, I'm the CFO of Co-Author Network, LLC, along with my husband, Emilio. And we help people share their story with the world.
Right. And today we have a fantastic guest that I'm sure people are going to want to hear his story way after today. This is something that's important. January 1st, for a lot of people, means a reset, whether it's mindset, whether it's physical, whatever that is, it's a new start. You can change your life. And this particular guest, his name is Jazz Wright, has a story to share. Let me read his bio. GETFITWRIGHT LLC was created to inspire, energize, and empower any and everyone who wants to become the best version of themselves. Many look at me and think, he's always been so driven and healthy. Little do they know, I started my journey into fitness when I was 16 years old and 310 pounds. My primary care physician at the time was very concerned with my weight and the probability of having health concerns later on in my life. I felt as though I hit rock bottom when I saw the scale at 310 pounds. I made the decision on January 1st, 2009, that I take ownership of my life. I had a football coach who started me on a weightlifting program to follow, and it was the best decision I made in my life. Over a decade later, that overweight kid is still in my heart and has a burning desire to continue to become better daily. My two biggest principles in life are ownership and time. If you take ownership of what you can control in life, you can have it all. If you use your time wisely, you'll maximize the 24 hours we were all given. Let's welcome Jazz to the show. Hello, Jazz. How are you?
I'm outstanding. I'm outstanding. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Listen, 14 years ago today, you made that decision. So take me back. You were 16 years old at that time when you made that decision? Yeah. Correct. So this didn't happen to you at 16. This happened to you way before 16.
Right.
So a lot of times, it starts in childhood, right? The relationship that we have with food starts, with family, with how we think of ourselves and how we have a relationship with our food. So take me back to you as a child and share with me your relationship with food.
Sure. So it was, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine. I was, I think, 8 years old, probably 8. And my mom had struggled with being overweight for a little while. And at my dad's, they were separated. So there was really no cognitive thought of what food did. And it was always comfort. So growing up, I'm not sure exactly when my mom was heavier, but it was always the thing to go to when things would kind of have a downfall in life, right? It was food. So that's the trajectory that I went on, was when things were, not going my way. I was bullied a little bit as a kid. Me and my sister had a good age gap between us. Love her to death, but it's not like I had somebody that was my age to kind of talk to or kind of, go to when things were issues. So it would always be food that I would turn to. And I remember wanting to become, athletic and play football, but I'm from Connecticut and there's a weight limit there. So when I first did, I was the proper weight, around 8. And I did like 1 lap and I was super tired, had asthma. And then that was when I started the quitting journey and turned to food. Right. From that day, I remember that day distinctively because I had asthma, ran to my mom. I was out of breath and I have no problem sharing that. And then I didn't want to have anything to do with running, anything to do with, anything that was hard and kind of going uphill. And ended up turning to food regularly. And then it became a vice, and it switched from food to being a necessity to, food kind of running my life, everything that I did for the most part. And a lot of blame on, because my mom didn't know any better, because, I felt like my grandmother spoiled me with food and stuff, and not taking that ownership, which is, one of my mantras. And from there, I was really trapped within, not dealing with the issue, regardless of being young. You know, we can't do much about our upbringing, but we have to control our life. And it was years and years of that happening. And luckily, by the grace of God, I didn't have any health issues. I have a very athletic background as well too with my family. So even with that being said, I knew it was only a matter of time. And God was with me the entire time because I knew that something was wrong. I'd have, the indigestion, the being, upset stomach when trying to go to sleep, eating pizza and stuff like that. So a lot of times when we have this revolving door with food, regardless of your age, we always think to ourselves it'll be different this time if we just indulge in our food. Well, it'll be just like the first time, we'll feel better. And it's always the same repeat. Always feel horrible after I indulge. So after time, I'm putting on, 5-10 pounds every year, and ended up moving to another place in Connecticut. And my cousin played for the Colts. And the reason I'm saying that is because I aspired to wanted to play football again about 8 years later. And I needed to get in shape. So when you're in high school in Connecticut, there's no weight limit. And I knew I was too heavy. So I was like, I need to get in shape. Number one, to have some confidence. Number two, for football, because I wanted to go to the NFL like my cousin. And, I thought I was doing some of the right things. And once I got on that scale at 16, I'll never forget, Dr. Gonellis is her name. I know she wouldn't mind me sharing that. She saw I was at 310. And the years leading up, at first I was just baby weight. It's okay, but we got to watch this. 12, all right, it's getting kind of serious. 13, all right, we got to bring the weight down. 15, got to bring, and then 16, I'm at 310, at 16 years old, and only going upwards from there. And it was a revolving door. So I actually sat with my friends before we went on like winter break, for the new year. And I had wrote down my journal, had my best friend to my left and my right. And I said, starting January 2nd, 2009, we're going to start taking our health seriously. Wrote it down. And from that point forward, never really looked back. Never looked back, and just took ownership and knew that I had to make some changes. And that was the first time where I realized it's going to be on me. The world doesn't really owe us understanding. But the first thing is to make the decision. The second thing is to seek counsel. And the third thing is just to continue to do the work. So through that journey, 15 years of me kind of being a mad scientist, because I had my coach that showed me what to do, but it was very, foundational. It wasn't really in depth, especially now because he was a football coach. So anybody who knows football is not really in depth with the intrinsics of how to properly train, calories in versus out, things of that nature. So from that point forward, I had to figure it out. It took me 15 years to really get this thing down. And that's the beauty of it, because I continue to learn. And that's what brought me to want to inspire others, is to expedite that time so that you manage your time, within 24 hours. It doesn't take you 15 years to get that weight down. So kind of went on a little bit of a rant there, but that's what got me to this point, and that's what made me make that jolt at age 16.
Snap back.
Wow.
Right. So one of the things Daniela does is she's a fantastic cook. And so she has a lot of history and background when it comes to eating and food. And I think culturally, myself being Latina, you African-American, Daniela Italian, a lot of our things are surrounded by food, right? Daniela, share that with us. Talk to us about
absolutely. Thank you, Marilyn. Growing up, traditional Italian family, my goodness, as soon as you get up in the morning, like you already smell my mom baking fresh bread, and, I'm like, okay. So, all homemade pastas and meatballs and, all this stuff. And growing up, as a kid, we don't think about, I'm going to gain weight. When you're little, you just eat what your mom puts in front of you, right? But it is true, though, because food is used sometimes as a reward, right? And we don't realize, it's like, oh, if you're upset, here's something to eat. Oh, here's candy. Oh, here's a piece of cake. And that adds up, but then we condition our minds to think that that's a reward, and that's how we keep going in life, right? So every time if we're upset, depressed, because I had this love-hate relationship with food since I'm young. And, I've never really been like overweight, let's say, but always battling that same 10, 20 pounds, and always, that self-image, especially, women, we look in the mirror, we're like, ugh, and so I had to learn to like recondition, like food. Yeah, it's a necessity, but food is meant to be enjoyed, right? But everything in moderation, everything in moderation, like should not deprive ourselves. Like the word diet that's a bad word, diet. It's not a diet. It should be a lifestyle. So that's what I've, done in recent years. Just make it a lifestyle to eat, more healthy, but treat yourself, not cheat, Don't condition your mind to think, oh, I'm cheating, I'm eating a piece of cake. No, it's a treat, but in moderation. So share with us, Jazz, how did you, move forward? What did you do? Did you start working out like a fiend? Did you just cut back? Share with us what you actually did to lose that weight.
So the first step, one of my biggest things, I love like juice. I love soda. So I
Mm-hmm.
used Crystal Light. I used different brands, and 20 pounds were off. So a lot of times, even with my clients, I'll baby steps with certain things. So I handled nutrition as well too. And my biggest kind of crux was the sweets in regards to drinks. So I cut that out right away. I already had the program with doing, the summer workouts and stuff like that, and lost 20 pounds. And once I saw the scale went down, I was able to start from there. So we already had a regimen that we were following in the summer, and then going through the winter as well, like off-season conditioning. And I had to make sure in the nutrition I switched, because initially I was doing the workouts and the scale wasn't moving much, but the nutrition, it's 50-50, right? Some people say 80-20, but it's 50-50. You can't outwork a bad diet. So I started with that, saw the scale went down. Then, back 2010, 2009, it's not like today. No one really knew about a caloric deficit. So I'm like, okay, maybe I need to stop eating 2 plates and just have one. And I saw the scale to go down more. Then I increased my cardio and started to realize that, if I'm doing steady state, it's burning a lot more cardio, a lot more calories than just weightlifting. So it was kind of systemic with, first thing I did was made sure that I cut out those sugary drinks. Then after that, I increased my cardio a little bit. Then I would do extra work, especially as a leader going into my junior and senior year, that I would do even more exercise than typical in my room. I remember there was a time I was like, I just wanted veins in my arms. So I would do like bicep curls regularly. Still no real plan, just being more active, more physically active, more output than intake. And I started to kind of go on that trajectory. And it was started with football, right? I had this idea in my mind to want to get to the league, even though it's, 0.001%. But then I fell in love with the grind. And then once I fell in love with that, I started to do my own research, which most wouldn't do, on how to properly exercise. And then I started to fall in love with the actual training aspect of getting better.
Right. So that was a progressive journey that you were on, right? Learning things as you went along. And I will share with you, mine was the opposite. So I was very thin. And when you're Latin and you're that thin, they think something's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
So my mother felt that she was a failure because I was so thin. Like, she was like, you got to put on some weight. And I was being offered food all day long. And I didn't really have a great appetite. I was constantly taken to the doctors to be put on things to stimulate my appetite. And when you look back, I was fine. My weight was what it should have been. I just didn't look like everybody else. So that self-image of, oh my God, this is a reflection on me. My other kids are okay. Why can't she gain some weight? Right. And it was just a fast metabolism that I had. No matter what I ate, I was not going to gain it. I didn't start gaining weight until after I had my children. When I got married, I was 90 pounds soaking wet. It was like, if I stressed out, and I'm a nurse since I'm 17 years old. So I was constantly active, constantly doing things, and I could put in all the calories I wanted. Some people are just made that way. And it
Can
didn't
I just
affect me.
interject, Marilyn?
Yes.
No one likes people like you.
Yeah. Yes. I found that out. I found that out real quick. I found that out real quick.
You can eat whatever you want and don't gain. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you would think that somebody like me, right, that I would feel good about myself, but I didn't, because my self-image was horrible, because I'm looking at every other girl who's Latin. I don't look like them, right? So I'm thinking there's something wrong with me. So I'm growing up with a bad self-esteem because of it, right? You get both sides of it. And then here I go. Now I have my children. I have thyroid issues with it, right? And now I've gained all this weight and I don't know what to do with myself because I can't lose it, right? So Jazz, what do you do with a client like me who's in her 50s, who's having trouble?
So 97% of my clientele is actually women who are either entrepreneurs, extremely busy, and that's kind of my niche, is helping them lose 2 to 3 pounds per week without losing business, without kind of losing themselves too much. So the biggest thing, honestly, is making up in your mind that you need to make a change, right? So a lot of times you won't see like my prices and stuff listed or anything, because and here's the reason. I'll kind of give you the backstory. I've been doing this 15 years and I've been training people like 5 or 8. I was a fitness manager before this, so I would train trainers. And the biggest thing was once I started to have my own clientele, it got to the point where I would care to more than they would care about their own success. And the reason I do these consultations is there has to be some deep pain points on why you want to change, because us being faith-based, especially, and even if you're not, whenever we have a goal, there's just going to be tribulations, even more so in front of your way. And the way my platform is, instead of it being in person, it's something where I have a platform online so that you are self-sufficient to make sure you can do it for a lifestyle. So the biggest thing is just making up in your mind, I have to make a change. The second thing is realizing that you have to seek counsel, right? And have some help to get there with somebody that's been there with proven testimonials. So the biggest thing I would say is getting the knowledge behind you, because I had the luxury, right, and kind of some of the scars of doing this for 15 years, but we don't have that time, especially with having kids, especially when being married. It's just a whole different dynamic than being 16. I had no responsibilities really, but to figure this thing out. So just like any other, master of a certain creed, you want to be able to reserve your time, right, and be able to do it in a faster fashion. So the biggest thing would be realizing that you got to make a change, right? Knowing why, like Daniela said, feeling better in your clothes, those pain points, I got to make a change, but I need some help doing that. And that's extremely powerful. And you're taking ownership just from seeking some kind of counsel and realizing I got to make a change. So if you're looking at it from tactical standpoint, right, it's going to be calories in versus out. And my clients appreciate that. The caloric deficit they're in, because most of them want to lose weight. It's something where they're able to lose the 2 to 3 pounds of fat per week, but they're also not starving. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. To Daniela's point with the dieting, people crash diet, liquid diet, stuff like that. So they're going strictly off motivation. And if you're doing that, you may last a week or two where you're losing 5 or 6 pounds. But number one, you're probably mostly losing water. Number two, you're going to run out of steam and gas. And then what people do is they binge eat after that. Because once we're hungry, we make bad choices. So it may last 7 days. Your willpower may last 14 days, 20 days. If it isn't something where you're able to be in a deficit with some kind of accountability and some restraint, but you're not starving, you're going to end up binge eating. So since it's a slow, steady kind of decline, or my clients average losing 8 to 10 pounds a month, it may take you 6 months to lose 60 pounds, but you'll keep it off and you'll learn the foundation on how to do it by yourself forever, right? And that's something they appreciate too, is not necessarily needing me, but because of the relationship, because of the results, they stick with me. And my last point is, a lot of times people think when I have a fitness goal that I have to be consumed by this fitness thing, and you don't have to be. Because someone that's a entrepreneur or mom, whatever it is, you still have to be social. You still have to be able to do a podcast and do these things. And if all you're thinking about is your next meal, your next workout, you're consumed by this, and it's not going to last forever. So they enjoy that they're able to travel, they're able to eat out, they're able to still do these things, right, and make sure that they can lose weight continually, because it can't consume you. It has to be very, very prominent in your mind where it's extremely important. But the accountability is what really helps. And when you have somebody hold you accountable, it kind of takes pressure off of you, because now you're like, someone's going to be watching, kind of what I'm doing. And then once you learn how to do it, self-accountability and discipline comes in. So, calories in versus out. Cardio is going to burn more than just weightlifting for the most part. You still want to have both, right, for different reasons. But doing something as simple as 120 minutes a week of steady state cardio is good for overall heart health and will help you lose weight. And being a caloric deficit. Women typically can handle about 300 to 400 calories in a deficit below their maintenance. So get a little nerdy here, but I still want to give some tactical steps if someone's not ready to hire a coach.
One question is, are those the calorie deficits, are they going to be different for a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, and a 50-year-old? Do you factor in age?
So scientifically proven, it's about 10 to 12 times your body weight. Right. So if someone is 150 pounds, usually their maintenance, if there's someone that's regularly active, is about 1,500 to 1,800. So what I typically do with my clients is I'll lower that about 400 to 500, and I'm always checking their hunger levels regularly. So I communicate with my clients like twice a day, right, through my platform. And if they're feeling super, super hungry, we slightly raise it, because at the end of the day, it's genetic. The only way to really measure how many calories you burn at maintenance is with like a extremely expensive mask, and we're not going to do that. So it's kind of a guesstimate, and it's usually about 10 to 12 times somebody's body weight. So me, I'm 220. I burn around 2,400, 2,500 because my caloric output at maintenance. So my, being under in a deficit is probably like 2,100, if that makes sense.
Right. So I'm your client and I call you. I'm hungry. What do you advise me?
So typically what I would
knock it off?
No, absolutely, and that's what most would do, right? And
Yeah.
here's a
Cut it
point
out.
before I answer that question, and we kind of spoke about this is when people are genetically blessed. I know you wanted me to bring this up. A lot of times they lose that personal part, of personal trainer. People have to take into account as a trainer, if they're going to respect this creed, you have to be extremely sensitive to somebody that's had bad habits for months, years, even decades. It's just not going to be
Right.
an on switch. I'm motivated. Now I'm going to be in shape. Does not work that way. You're here to serve as their trainer, right? So if you tell me that, since I'm already doing the nutrition, the first thing I'm looking at is your foods. Are your foods calorically dense but small, right? That means you're going to still be hungry. Number two, protein intake. What do your protein kind of look like? Because protein will keep you satious as well too. So we kind of up that. The second step would just be slightly raise those calories, right? And maybe we'll just do 10 more minutes of steady state cardio to balance it out. Either way, the weight will go down. But the first thing I'm looking at, what foods are you eating? Is it minimal in the sense of I'm eating, 2 meals, but they're this big, and it's a burger or something where it's a bunch of calories, but you're not going to get full, right? A bag of chips this big, it's a bunch of calories, you're not going to get full. So there's a hormone called ghrelin in your body that makes you hungry, right? If you're able to satiate that, you won't make bad choices. We make bad choices when we're hungry. So your body doesn't know the difference between, a cup of ice cream or 10 cups of spinach. Not saying that that's equivalent to switch, but when you're full, you're full. So now we just got to manipulate the foods within reason. And there's different ways to make your food taste just as good as something that isn't the best for you within reason, because we don't want to demonize food either. You still want to be able to eat the finer things in life. It's just how much are we eating, right? What your goals are, having it within reason, and making sure that you learn what to do, because my goal is to make sure that my clients don't need me at some point. That's the ultimate goal.
Right. Daniela?
Wow, yeah, that you shared so much valuable information in there, and the main thing for me that I had to learn, especially us as women, we think, oh, I'm just eating once a day, and
Right.
I'm not eating a lot, so I'll lose weight, and it's so the opposite. Like my husband,
Right.
he has a degree in health and exercise science. He was a fitness trainer, so I learned a lot from him. Like he's repeating a lot of the same things you're saying. That I'm not eating enough, so your body's going to hold on to the fat you have because you think it's starving. Correct. Share a little bit about that.
So kind of to challenge that typically doesn't happen. What usually happens is either the food you're eating is a lot, so it's a lot of calories in it, or you're doing that for consecutive days where you're getting 400, 500 calories, which is super low. And then at some point, there's a binge eating that goes on. Like me, I used to be a closet eater, right? And that never really leaves. So you may be doing this where it's, I'm waiting or don't have a high metabolism, or I'm super busy. So now I'm only getting one meal. I'm doing that 1, 2, 3 days. And then that fourth day, you're so hungry, you can't put the fork down. So it's one or the other, right? Unless you're like the 0.00001% of someone having a metabolism issue, which typically we don't. It's just access to calories, too much calories. That's all it comes down to. So either the food you're eating is super high in calories, or you're doing that for a little bit, but then on the fourth day, you're eating a whole bunch. Then you're eating a small amount. Fourth day, you're eating a whole bunch. And then by the end of the week, you're eating more than you burn. So it's simply, am I burning more than I'm intaking? And you will lose weight. It just has to be consistent.
And that's usually triggered by, the human body will get you to do that because, you're starving. So it wants you to find food. So the hormones are going to increase for you to find that food. And that's why you're also weak, because your body will start, slowing down its metabolism, because if you're not feeding it, it goes into survival mode. So you're both right. Emilio's right as well when it comes to that, because biologically, absolutely, that does happen. Your body starts to shut down because of it. So one of the things that I looked up is our obesity rates in the United States from the CDC. Okay. So non-Hispanic Black adults, 49.9% has the highest age-adjusted prevalence of obesity, number one, followed by Hispanic adults, 45.6%, non-Hispanic white adults at 41%, and non-Hispanic Asian adults, 16%.
Wow.
Sounds like we should be following the Asian diet, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
16.
100%.
So 50% for the rest of us. So when I talk about culturally, absolutely, there is a change. And as a nurse, I see it myself. So when we're looking at diabetics, I see a lot of diabetics, right? And the biggest challenge for them is, what do I eat? Because our typical diets are very starchy, carbohydrate, dense foods. So do you tailor your program to the ethnicity of the person.
Not necessarily. The thing is, at the end of the day, there's so much communication. So if there's certain foods that they're just not willing to give up, I get it, but there has to be a sacrifice somewhere, right? Like my mom's West Indian, so Jamaican, I completely get it growing up, right? But at some point, we're gonna have to shop for some of the foundational foods because we'll find, no matter where we turn, those are the lower calorically dense foods at the end of the day. So it depends. Is the juice worth the squeeze for you? Is this piece of, right, let's say brown stew chicken for my Jamaicans out there with the skin on it, that's this big, it has way more calories than a few pieces of chicken breast that you can still doctor up. So at the end of the day, you can't really escape the work. You're going to have to do the work with the shopping, with doctoring it up, with, Mrs. Dash, different things where it's not as much sodium. There's ways to manipulate it and still have it taste relatively the same. Are you willing to do the work? And of course, we're not going to completely take out some of the cultural foods that you love. I have, a bevy of different clients that are either Hispanic, right, Jamaican, African American, and certain foods they're just not going to kick. But at the same time, okay, that means we got to do more here. That's all it really is. Because again, we don't want to completely take a food out. It's just, are we having too much of it? And then we got to do some more work over here. And the good news is, let's say that you did put a certain food on pause that just did not fit within the constraints of the nutritional guide that I gave you. When you come back to it, taste buds are going to explode. It's going to be even that much better, right? Because what happens is if there's a certain food that just isn't good for us, we start to serve the food instead of the food serving us. But when you're able to take a break, get to your goals, and you come back, it's like, number one, you enjoy it so much. But then number two, you may not necessarily want to go back to it because of your success you had. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, just to share an experience, I had gone on a keto diet back in 2019 because I wanted to lose some weight, and it was my children were having events and I wanted to take pictures, and I was like, the way I felt, I wasn't going to do it. And I did it, and I stuck to it, and I kept going. But once I finished, I said, my goal is going to be, I like this coconut icy, right, from this particular place in Brooklyn. I was like, my treat is going to be that when I reach that goal, when I lose this 25 pounds, I'm going to give myself that treat. Well, I took myself to Brooklyn. I went over to Uncle Louis G's. I got myself my coconut icy, and it tasted terrible to me. I was like, wow. I didn't like the taste of it anymore. Right? It tasted completely different from what I had remembered. And I was like, I'm so disappointed. But it was like, oh, well, the good foods tasted better to me. The bad foods you could taste the badness in them. You could taste the sugar. You could taste those things that the fat in them. I was tasting them. They tasted different.
Right.
Yeah, so it was different.
And that's the transition that happens when it's a lifestyle change. And again, you can still be able to enjoy those things. It's just within reason. And a lot of times when people hear even this conversation or someone that's, in great shape or they see as in great shape, they think, you've got to already be in that mindset, but you're in this mindset of having bad habits for a while. It is just one step at a day, one day at a time, one meal at a time, one workout at a time. You got to remember that, especially because the majority of people are overweight and have been there for a while. And another thing, going back to my trainers, I hope some of them are hearing this too. That personal part is being able to crawl, then walk, then sprint with these people. You can't go out the gate like many do, 1,000 burpees, 1,000 push-ups. That's not even training. It's just throwing something on the wall and seeing what sticks. And then people have a very bad taste in their mouth coming into consultations where their guard is up like this. So they see me 6'2", 220, and they think that I'm a drill sergeant. And that's not the case at all, right? I'm a teddy bear at the end of the day. We're going to get you to your goal. There is some type of accountability, but it's not a yes, sir, do 100 push-ups. It just doesn't make sense. And there's far too many stories I hear of that. So I'm saying all that to say, if you're someone that you feel like you're way behind the 8 ball going into 2023, you can make this happen one day at a time, one decision at a time, one step at a time. I was there. 2009, I was there. And it just took one thing at a time. And you have the luxury of having coaches. And it's not just me. There's some great coaches out there. But seek counsel, because a lot of times we'll have these monetary goals, we'll have these relationship goals. And if your health and fitness isn't where it should be, you don't necessarily have the same cognitive skills or the energy to be able to really enjoy those things or flourish in those things or be able to go full speed ahead in those things because you don't have the energy, you don't have the endurance, you don't have the passion like you could. Some people are already on 1,000 with their passion. Imagine if you were in shape, you'd be on 1,000,000. So that's what's holding yourself back. The best version of you in 2023 is praying and hoping that you make this change, and it's one day at a time.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that. Daniela, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah. So two things. What Jazz said. A lot of us just jump in. They're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this, and then they start hardcore with the the workouts and cutting out all the bad stuff, and you just set yourself up for failure. Doing that, because you can't just cut out everything and
Right.
work out like a fiend. So one thing at a time, like Jazz says, one step at a time. And number two, as far as the food, you don't really have to give up all your favorites, because from what I do as being a cook, there's always a healthy alternative.
Right.
So you just have to look for healthy alternatives. So, Jazz, what would you say? January, it's January 1st. People are making New Year's resolutions, and that's what they do. I'm jumping in. I'm going to the gym 7 days a week. What's your advice for that?
I would say, and it's funny, I did a live post. Number one is just do a deep self-analysis with where are my pitfalls every year? Because we'd be naive to say this is the first year we made some resolutions. And we get out of life what we need, not what we want. So figure out what you need, figure out where your pitfalls are. Do I, stumble after 10 days, after 15 days? If it falls on a Wednesday, do I start Monday? Do I procrastinate? And get somebody that can hold you accountable. Whether it be accountability partner, make sure that they're in a further place than you are, because a lot of times we do like a buddy system, and no pun intended, it's the blind leading the blind. If they don't know how to get there, you're naive to think they can get you there. So seeking counsel and some kind of coach is going to be imperative. First thing is just doing a self-analysis. Am I going through the same rodeo, or can I do something different? What pitfalls do I have? At least acknowledging them is extremely powerful. Don't wait. I mean, even, you know what I'm saying? Start now. Do not wait because it's Sunday. I don't care if there's a party going on next. Listen, anybody that's throwing these things, those parties will be there in excess. Trust me, even more, and you'll enjoy them even more. These other, endeavors you have once you're in shape, once you conquer these little wins, right? And start grading day to day your tasks, A to F, right? If you're winning those tasks instead of just the outcome. So you have a goal over here. Grade yourself on the efforts every single day, right? One brick a day, and then you'll wake up and you'll have that mansion, you'll have that dynasty. So analysis, counsel, grade your daily tasks.
Fantastic.
Wow.
And Josh, this is the last question I have for you today that I always ask my guests is, how do you measure success?
That's a good question. Making sure that you're finding some kind of peace, right? Making sure that you're on your purpose. And just loving the work that you do instead of the outcome. It kind of goes back to what I said before. So whatever passion you have, there's a way to find it. And typically there's processes to do that. But I think the fast track to that is taking somebody from where they were to where you are. So pretty much taking the old you to where you are, right? And falling in love with that process and whatever it may be, and loving the work. And there's a point in time where you start to love the work more than the accolades, because what usually happens is we have way more tribulations than success. So when you love that work, those things that add to your testimony, that's success at the end of the day, and you'll wake up and it'll be there. And it's always ongoing. You never want to be somewhere where you think you know it all or you got it all, because then you're a closed book and they put those books on the shelf. So love the process and kind of find what your purpose is.
Fantastic. Now, where can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
Absolutely. So it could be in my Instagram, which is Leave Your Mark, LEAVEURMARQ. And then my name, Jazz Wright, on Facebook. Also, my email is GETFITWRIGHT, so GETFITWRIGHT LLC @outlook.com, and we can set up that consultation for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on our show today. Thank you, Daniela, for co-hosting.
Thank you. And
thank you guys
Jazz.
so much. Appreciate
and have
you guys.
a blessed year.
You too.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gabrielle Morales, and I am a recruitment coordinator for Be The Match. My journey with Be The Match actually began when I was only 9 years old. At that point, my 7-month-old baby sister was diagnosed with an extremely rare form of leukemia. Through the Be The Match registry, we were able to find a matching donor for my sister. And although a few months later, we lost her, her cancer was cured. Our family is so thankful for the additional months that we had with my sister. And ever since then, I've made a promise to myself to dedicate my life to helping children just like Isabella and helping families like ours by continuing her legacy. Hence why I now work for Be The Match. I love what I do so much, and I'm able to spread awareness about the huge need for more donors on the registry, especially those of diverse backgrounds. There is currently a huge disparity within the registry for minority patients, and we need your help. It is so simple to save a life and to be put on the registry. You can visit izzy'slegacy.com or text Izzy's Legacy to the number 61474 to start the registration process to be on the Be the Match registry, to hopefully be a life-saving match for a searching patient in need.